All right, everyone. So I want to introduce you to the different types of vertebrae. Now, if you look at our list, most of the vertebrae that you have to worry about, you just need to be able to identify the different types of vertebrae. So you won't have to worry about naming individual vertebrae except for the very first two. All right. So if you look at this, we've got three different types of vertebrae. We have cervical vertebrae, thoracic vertebrae, and lumbar vertebrae, along with our sacrum and coccyx. Now, for the most part, you only have to be able to identify the different types of vertebrae. The exception is C1, which is called the atlas. This is the very first vertebrae that comes off of your skull. And C2, called the axis, which is right below it. Other than that, all your other vertebrae, you just need to know by type. So I just want to go over the different types of vertebrae first, and then I'll show you the atlas and the axis, and they're so unique, you can't miss them. Now, first of all cervical vertebrae are your neck. So you have cervical vertebrae in your neck. There's 7 of them, and they're really easy to identify because they have 3 foramen. All right, I'm going to put this example up here. So if you see a vertebrae with 1, 2, 3 foramen, it is, let's see if I can turn this, there it is, 1, 2, 3 foramen. It's a cervical vertebrae. No doubt, 100%. You have 7 cervical vertebrae. They're in your neck, and they have 3 foramen. These side foramen are called transverse foramen, and only cervical vertebrae have them. All right? So that's the first one. The first vertebrae, you have to know, cervical vertebrae. Then the second type of vertebrae, it says right here, are the thoracic vertebrae. And there's 12 of those. Now, your thoracic vertebrae have a very long spinous process that comes down, kind of pointing down. And when you hold it, they look like giraffe heads. So if it's a giraffe head, see, here's his little ears and his little horns and his nose. You got giraffe heads. You've got thoracic vertebrae. All right. So I'll put them down here so you can see them. This is actually what we drew in the other video. I had you draw to name all the parts and pieces of vertebrae. We drew these thoracic vertebrae. So here they are. See, they're little giraffe heads. They're pretty cute. So you have 12 thoracic vertebrae. All right, then our next one, if you look at our list, are the lumbar vertebrae. Now, lumbar vertebrae are much larger. So when you look at lumbar vertebrae, they're really kind of fat. They have fat bodies, and their spinous processes are rounded off. They're not long and pointy. So see, you compare a thoracic vertebrae with a lumbar, and you can see the big difference between the spinous processes. So these guys are really fat. And just to pop them up here for you, you can see a couple different examples of the lumbar vertebrae. All right, sweet. Now, those are the major types of vertebrae. All right. We also have these two cervical vertebrae, the atlas and the axis, that you have to know by name. So let's start with the atlas. The atlas is this one I had up here just a minute ago that I said was a cervical vertebrae. It's just really a weird looking vertebrae. It doesn't really have a spinous process coming off of it. If I spin this around here. So no spinous process. It's got a very big vertebral foramen. It's just a very unique looking vertebrae. So that is our atlas. And then our axis is even funkier. There's no other vertebrae that looks anything like it. At first, you think when you look at it from the top, you're like, that's not a cervical vertebrae. It doesn't have 3 foramen. But if you tilt it, so you can see the transverse foramen. So this is the axis. And see what happens is the axis has this bump, this projection, this process that sticks up called the dens. And the dens and the atlas fit together and make a pivot. So this is how you turn your head. So you've got your atlas, number 1, C1, axis, C2. Okay, we're not quite done with the vertebral column because we have to talk about the end of it, the sacrum and the coccyx. And so a lot of people think that the sacrum and the coccyx are, I guess, part of the pelvis, but they're part of your vertebrae. So the sacrum is this big top part, and it's made up of 5 fused vertebrae. So you can count, if you turn it over, so you can count, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fused vertebrae. Now, the coccyx is your tailbone, and some people have 3, some people have 5, just depends, but they are also made up of fused vertebrae. When you are an embryo, these are unfused, all of them. Your coccyx and your sacrum are both unfused, and you have a tail. And then genes turn on that take those vertebrae and compact them together to form these 2 bones. So your sacrum and your coccyx make up the very end of your vertebral column. All right, so that kind of takes care of the vertebral column. The only thing we have left to mention is our ribs and the rib cage, and I'll be doing that in the next video. All right, so I will see you later. Have a good day.